The Light Princess, Part 6. "I must go home," said the princess. "I'm very sorry, for this is delightful." "So am I," returned the prince, "but I'm glad I haven't a home to go to. At least, I don't exactly know where it is." "I wish I hadn't one either," rejoined the princess. "It's so stupid. I have a great mind," she continued, "to play them all a trick. Why couldn't they leave me alone? They won't trust me in the lake for a single night. You see where that green light is burning? That's the window of my room. Now, if you would just swim there with me very quietly, and when we are all but under the balcony, give me such a push, up you call it, as you did a while ago, I should be able to catch hold of the balcony, get in at the window, and then they may look for me till tomorrow morning." "With more obedience and pleasure," said the prince gallantly, and away they swam, very gently. "Will you be in the lake tomorrow night?" the prince ventured to ask. "To be sure I will." "I don't think so." "Perhaps," was the princess's somewhat strange answer. But the prince was intelligent enough not to press her further, and he merely whispered, as he gave her the parting lift, "Don't tell." The only answer the princess returned was a roguish look. She was already a yard above his head, and the look seemed to say, "Never fear, it's too good fun to spoil that way." So perfectly like other people had she been in the water, that even yet the prince could scarcely believe his eyes when he saw her ascend slowly, grasp the balcony, and disappear through the window. He turned, almost expecting to see her still by his side, but he was alone in the water. So he swam away quietly, and watched the lights roving about the shore for hours after the princess was safe in her chamber. As soon as they disappeared, he landed in search of his tunic and sword, and after some trouble he found them again, and then he made the best of his way round the lake to the other side. There the wood was wilder, and the shore steeper, rising more immediately towards the mountains which surrounded the lake on all sides, and kept sending it messages of silvery streams from morning to night, and all night long. He found a spot whence he could see the green light in the princess's room, and where, even in broad daylight, he would be in no danger of being discovered from the opposite shore. It was a sort of cave in the rock, and he provided himself a bed of withered leaves, and he lay down too tired for hunger to keep him awake. All night long he dreamed that he was swimming with the princess. Early next morning the prince set out to look for something to eat, which he soon found at a forester's hut, where for many following days he was supplied with all that a brave prince could consider necessary, and having plenty to keep him alive for the present, he would not think of wants not yet in existence. Whenever care intruded, this prince always bowed him out in the most princely manner. When he returned from his breakfast to his watch cave, he saw the princess already floating in the water, attended by the king and queen, whom he knew by their crowns, and a great company in lovely little boats, with canopies of all the colours of the rainbow, and flags and streamers of a great many more. It was a very bright day, and soon the prince, burned up with the heat, began to long for the cold water and the cool princess. But he had to endure till twilight, for the boats had provisions on board, and it was not until the sun went down that the gay party began to vanish. Boat after boat drew away to the shore, following that of the king and queen, till only one, apparently the princess's own boat, remained. But she did not want to go home even yet, and the prince thought he saw her order the boat to the shore without her. At all events it rowed away, and now of all the radiant company only one white speck remained, and the prince began to sing. Before he had finished his song, the princess was just under the place where he sat, and looking up to find him. Her ears had led her truly. "Would you like a fall, princess?" said the prince, looking down. "Ah, there you are. Yes, if you please, prince," said the princess, looking up. "How do you know I'm a prince, princess?" he asked. "Because you're a very nice young man, prince," she replied. "Come up then, princess." "Fetch me, prince." The prince took off his scarf, then his sword belt, then his tunic, and tied them all together and let them down. but the line was far too short. He unwound his turban and added it to the rest, when it was just all but long enough, and his purse completed it. The princess just managed to lay hold of the knot of money and was beside him in a moment. This rock was much higher than the other, and the splash and the dive were tremendous. The princess was in ecstasies of delight, and their swim was delicious. Night after night they met, and swam about in a dark, clear lake, where such was the prince's gladness that, whether the princess's way of looking at things infected him, or he was actually getting light-headed, he often fancied that he was swimming in the sky instead of the lake. But when he talked about being in heaven, the princess laughed at him dreadfully. When the moon came, she brought them fresh pleasure. Everything looked strange and new in her light, with an old, withered yet unfading newness. When the moon was nearly full, one of their great delights was to dive deep in the water and then, turning round, look up through it at the great blot of light close above them, shimmering and trembling and wavering, spreading and contracting, and seeming to melt away and again grow solid. And then they would shoot up through the blot, and lo, there was the moon, far off, clear, steady and cold, and very lovely, at the bottom of a deeper and bluer lake than theirs, as the princess said. The prince soon found out that while in the water the princess was very like other people, and besides this she was not so forward in her questions or pert in her replies at sea as on shore. Neither did she laugh so much, and when she did laugh it was more gently. She seemed altogether more modest and maidenly in the water than out of it. But when the prince, who had really fallen in love when he fell in the lake, began to talk to her about love, she always turned her head and laughed. After a while she began to look puzzled, as if she was really trying to understand what he meant, but could not, revealing a notion that he meant something. But as soon as ever she left the lake, she was so altered that the prince said to himself, "If I marry her, I see no help for it. We must turn into merman and mermaid and go out to sea at once."